I'll say good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you sign in from today, just as folks start filtering in. Thanks so much for joining us for a deep dive on Copper Plateau with Cascade Copper. I'm joined today by Jeff Ackert, the company's CEO, and Shannon Baird, the company's VP Exploration. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Very well. Thank you very much, Romeo. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So here's how today's going to work for folks in the room. Jeff and Shannon are going to run us through a detailed presentation on the project. Then I'm going to have a few follow-up questions, and we're going to throw it to the live audience. Now, this is an interactive event, so that chat button on the bottom right of your screen, you can use it at any point during today's presentation and ask questions to the folks in the room. We'll try to get to as many as we can today. Hopefully, we'll be able to get to all of them. But in case we don't, I'm going to send them to the Cascade team, and they'll be able to get back to you as soon as possible. The other thing I'll say is today's event is being recorded and will be available live on replay probably later this afternoon, Eastern Time. It'll be available on both 6.com, but also our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I'll get into the protein of today's event by throwing it to Jeff.
All right. Thanks, Romeo, and appreciate the opportunity today. So we'd like to, maybe Shannon, you can pull up the screen there. We can have a look at it. I think a lot of you people have seen me before, president of the company. But I'd like to introduce Shannon. Shannon and I have been working together for a number of years on Cascade, but also in the past on many things around the world, including in South America and the Caribbean, and in Canada and with another company. So I know Shannon well, and he's an excellent geologist, and happy to have him on the team. So what I'd like to do is just maybe the next slide, Shannon, will have a quick look here, forward-looking statements. There may be a few during the presentation, so please keep that in mind. Next slide. This is important for us. We're a small company, just recently listed on the CSE. And as you can see, we've got very little shares outstanding at 36.9 million shares. And I think that's a real bonus for our shareholders now, and any shareholder that would like to join us coming as an investor. Our fully diluted is 45.5 million. That's with warrants and options. And our market cap is sitting at about 1.5 million. So lots of room to grow. Thanks, Shannon. The next stage, or the next slide there. Just another introduction to our team, myself and Shannon, as I mentioned. Yannick is our CFO. Darcy, Allison, and Sam are all directors and well associated with us and guiding us along the way. And I don't have them on there yet, but I've just brought in Neil Murata as an advisor to the company, a fellow that has a lot of capital markets experience. So without further ado, I think what I'll do is hand it over to Shannon now, and he can give you a little bit more detail on our philosophy and our work at Copper Plateau. Thanks, Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Sorry if it gets a little loud. It just started pouring rain here and thundering. It's hitting the window hard.
Yeah, forward to it.
So you'll see on the next slide as well, here's a brief overview of our 4 projects in British Columbia. It's Copper Plateau, Rogers Creek, Fire Mountain, and Bender. Most are copper, moly, gold porphyries, except for Bender, which is a gold, potentially epithermal system. And we have one more project in Ontario, northwestern Ontario, called Centerfire. It's a copper dominant, but it has quite a bit of gold and silver credits in it too. It's potentially VMS system. But today we will be talking about the Copper Plateau project. So as I said, here these are 4 British Columbia properties. There is Rogers Creek and Fire Mountain that are within the Lillooet Lake Valley, just southeast of Pemberton. Bender, which is up near Braylorne area. It's a similar setting to Braylorne. And I don't know, Jeff, are we going over the details, or that's?
No, I think just let's focus on Copper Plateau and go from there. Yeah.
And then Copper Plateau is down in south central British Columbia, kind of close to Kelowna, and Penticton's just to the east of it. And we'll go over this on the next slides as well, that there's approximately 100 holes and some fairly good grades. maybe I'll let Jeff. Do you want to go over this slide?
Sure. Yeah. I think when you do look at a project, and you not only look at internally what kind of attributes you have. So when we first looked at Copper Plateau, in the historic data, we were quite impressed with what was there, and then we started looking around in the neighborhood and seeing what other mines and projects are in the area. So this slide really draws your attention to, first of all, Copper Mountain, which is a producing mine and not that far away, just south of Princeton. The former Brenda copper mine, which was a relatively small mine, but had some decent moly and copper. And as you go further north up through the Quesnel terrain, you hit probably Canada's biggest copper mine, Teck's Highland Valley Copper, sitting a little bit further up north of Merritt. And another fact was, and I think there's some similarities between our project and what Kodiak is doing at the MPD project, is that it was a historic project. It had some early drilling. They used some new techniques and new exploration techniques, and basically just started drilling and drilled some deep holes and came up with some very, very good numbers. So I think that, that kind of puts Copper Plateau into a region that is producing, but also new exploration and new discoveries. And that's what we hope to have as new discoveries at Copper Plateau.
Thanks, Jeff. So there's been quite a bit of historical work done on it, even though I would still consider it underexplored in general. Mm-hmm. Most of the work's been focused on where the more modern drilling has taken place. So there's you'll see on the next slide, there's project-wide coverage of airborne magnetics, radiometrics, VLM. Approximately 30 line kilometers of IP, but it's been sporadic over a few decades and small piecemeal surveys. And nothing's really been tied together with that. There was a 3D IP survey done, but it just covered over the main zone where the modern drilling was done, and it was fairly tightly spaced, so it's shallow depth of penetration. And then the 3D inversion was done on the IP data. A significant amount of soil samples covered the area, and a few rocks and stream sediments, but there's a thin veneer of glacial till that covers the entire area, and it's a big plateau. It's fairly flat. So soils were the best method for really defining target areas in this region. And then nearly 20,000 meters, probably closer, about 18,500 of diamond drilling. Plus there's been percussion drilling all within about 100 holes. And I believe 58 or 59 of them were modern diamond drill holes. Magnetic susceptibility, IP, and petrographic studies. And then we did a very reconnaissance style tear spec alteration study when we went out there and took some samples. You'll see a diagram on one of the next slides as well, just to get a kind of general feel for the alteration. Now, this is a 2005 airborne geophysics survey. We're just showing the magnetics and then the apparent resistivity that was derived from the magnetics and EM data that was flown. So these stars are all the historic drill holes. Most of the modern ones are focused within this area right here, and then all these other black stars are the percussion holes that on the periphery. And you can see there's fairly good contrast between magnetic bodies in the area, and then the structural trends that come through here and causing all this mag destruction or disruption through here, where the you'll see the soil anomaly maps in the next slides as well. And these kind of arcuate magnetic features where when I went out for a field visit, there's quartz magnetite, chalcopyrite, and malachite veining that I discovered up here. There's associated high resistivity, which would make sense if there's stockwork quartz veining in the area. Here's kind of a circular target here, and then where the main zone is here, there's another one. And then these large regional late structures cut through northeast, southwest through the region as well. So these are the 5,000 soils that were taken on the project. And then this is copper in soils that's been contoured. And there's fairly significant soil grades for copper. Like all these dark triangles here are over 200 ppm copper. And I don't know where the scale went on this. I think it's too small in this diagram, but this is about a kilometer from this point here to up here. And then this is a 2.5 kilometer trend here. And then this is approximately 2 kilometers from here to here. And one of the things I like a lot about this is that it has a lot of moly credits in it. And moly is fairly immobile within when you're taking soil, so it kind of stays around the general vicinity of where the mineralization is. So this is quite high, 13 up to 101 ppm moly in soils where all these black triangles are in these dark zones. So these are fairly large molybdenum targets through this area, showing that there's a broader halo of molybdenum mineralization with kind of concentrated, structurally controlled zones, probably of copper throughout the center cores of it. And here's kind of a circular feature as well with a kind of a more copper-rich core here. Mm-hmm. This is basically kind of a similar slide. It's just this is the apparent resistivity, semi-transparent in the background, and showing the same soil contours, but with the drill holes overlaid to get you a better reference of how they relate into the soil anomalies. So this is copper. Yeah, copper here. So there's this broad interval or overview, I guess. And then all these PDH holes are the percussion holes that were drilled through that anomaly. They were all vertical percussion holes, and they were all less than 75 meters of depth. But they for the most part, all had mineralization within them. A lot of them had at least 500 ppm copper, and then fairly anomalous moly as well. This is an oblique kind of view of. I'll probably pull up another model after this to kind of get you a better view of it, but all these spheres are the superficial soils that are greater than 150 ppm copper on surface, and the main zone goes through here. You can see the bottoms of the drill traces down here. So, and this yellow is the 3D IP that was done over top of the main zone. And the takeaway from that is that it highlighted the main zone really well. Like this is the broader, lower chargeability. So it's kind of a broader halo, but when you bring it to higher up to like 30 or whatever, it outlines basically like the surrounding area and follows the drilling fairly well. But you can see that it's cut off fairly close to surface still. I believe it was only like 100 and maybe 75 meters of depth of confidence for their IP survey. So it was fairly tightly spaced, which you'll see in our plans. We would like to do wider spaced surveying to get a better depth feel for the area. So as the text says, the last drilling was done in 2008. Maybe Jeff will touch on the history of the project a bit more for how we ended up with it after this, but
sure, yeah, I could do that.
So all the drilling has, the modern stuff has all copper moly and all the ICP MS assaying. So we have a fairly robust data set now. And then even the percussion holes have copper and moly and some, it's sporadic gold and silver throughout them as well. So one of the takeaways is that the soil geochemistry shows fairly good anomalism through 3 significant areas throughout the project, and only one of them's really been tested. And there were percussion holes through this main zone area at the same time that the ones were done through these other anomalies, but the ones in the main zone had fairly similar assay results for copper and moly, but it's just nothing else was followed up on the other one, on the other areas. So the northwest and the southwest extensions of this have never really been tested. And right now I'm compiling the data and going over all the historic drill logs and assays and trying to build out high grade zone targets and geological models and stuff like that. And this is I should mention this magenta down here is the magnetic modeling that the inversion modeling that I did with the airborne magnetics, and it shows a good correlation. I'll bring up the other 3D model to show this better, and you'll see it in the next drilling slides too, that it seems to be there's magnetic zones and then kind of scalloping or kind of annulus rings around them that are magnetic lows that where all this mineralization is occurring. So this is one of the reasons why before I did all this modeling of the data and the drilling and putting everything into 3D, just looking at some of the assays in the area before I built all these composites as well. So all of these intercepts are greater than 1% copper equivalent. Scale bar got cut off here, I guess, but this zone is at least 400 meters wide and about 750 meters strike length, just of what was built with the original model. And this is about a 275 meter depth extent to down here, just for reference. So the main thing that drew us to the property is this very high grade core through, like, you don't really see numbers like this in a lot of areas, especially from surface. Here's a couple intervals here, examples, like 67.8 meters of 0.5% copper, 12.2 of 1.1%, 6 meters of 1% copper. equivalent. But then we also get things like this here, where another 62 meters of just over 1% copper equivalent as well, which is in this area here as well. And this is just a small snippet of the mineralization, the interval table that we built from the historic data. I believe the entire table, Jeff, is on the website as well.
Yeah, and on their press release that was that came out just before PDAC this year.
Yeah.
So
so this is just a small snippet of from that, but pretty much nearly every hole except for I believe it was 2 of them that were ones that were kind of drilled off to the northeast of the main zone as a kind of initial. They're the first holes. Pretty much all of them were above 0.1% copper equivalent for the near entirety of the holes. With all like a lot of just broad mineralization as well, where you're getting mineable kind of, well, you can't really say mineable grades, but like 0.3% copper equivalents over large intervals, with all these high grade zones that are kind of fairly close to surface still and at depth. Some of these are like 250, 300 meters down, where you're still getting like 9%.
I think that was Shannon. Sorry, I was just going to interrupt you here about the ones that we are highlighting in this image are at depth, right? So this is kind of what we were saying is, sure, there's a great near surface concentration of really high grade stuff, but we're seeing hints of it as we go deeper in the system, and you can see by the concentration of drill holes, there really aren't that many at depth. So that's sort of where we see some of the upside in the project, is certainly following up some of these lower down elevation ones.
And you'll see that with the next slides as well, that like this is still all wide open, and this is all wide open over here and untested as well. For reference as well, this is that magnetic susceptibility model, the inversion model that I built as well. So you can see that there's kind of a demagnetization or scalloping around the edge of this. So this is pretty much not the same, but similar figure showing our target zones. This is just around the main zone, the main mineralized zone. And I believe that, yes, this is 0.5% copper equivalent instead of 1%, just showing that it's not just a high grade kind of single zone cutting through. It's a broad area of above what's considered mineable grade in British Columbia, fairly significantly above still at 0.5. And this is all from surface. So as Jeff was just pointing out, so the southeastern area has right to where a block model was done. It was mineralized right to the edge of it, which is these drill holes right here. So nothing was tested near surface to the east of that, along the whole eastern boundary of the main zone, as well as at depth. This is all, you can see there's fairly high grade hits all the way to the ends of these holes, and these are up to 400 meters depth, I think, in this one, but they're 45, so it's closer to 300-ish. Oh yeah, right here. So, and then this greater than 300 meter vertical depth extent is one of our other main targets below this, to try and catch the high grade zone at depth as well as the broader envelope of mineralization. So these black lines are all potential drill holes, which are just kind of would be to test these deeper target areas. The southern soil anomaly, this image makes it seem like it's to the west, but it's to the south. It's more of a oblique view along strike of this zone. So it's just a kind of an odd angle for it. This is a kind of a better compilation overview of everything we were just talking about. Okay, so everything you just saw in the drilling was this small zone right here, the main mineralized zone. And same as before, all of these spheres are the surface soil samples that are greater than 150 ppm copper. So that southern extension target anomaly zone here, is that how I was saying that it just appears like it's offset, is the southern extension here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then as you can see, this mag model rimming the mag over here is another kind of fairly good anomaly zone of copper that we're pretty excited about over there as well. And you can catch the kind of scalloping out of this, the high magnetics through this as well, that where the copper is associated. So you're kind of getting a conjunction of anomalies that are very promising when we know what's here on surface and the grades we're getting here. And then you're getting the same 2.5 kilometer long by, I believe it's, 600 meter copper anomaly up here. Same geophysical target subsurface anomaly. Same with this over here. You're getting the around the edge of this geophysics, and over here as well. And it's on strike extension. There's a bit of an offset going on with this later regional here, but this is a strike extension of this zone here. It's been turned a little bit, it looks like. And then same with over here is another anomaly, which is is untested really. So this is that kind of just really reconnaissance terraspec survey that we did. There's very few samples. It's, as I was saying, there's not a lot of exposure. It's a flat plateau and thin glacial veneer that's maybe 2 to 3 meters, covers the area. But I went out with a colleague of mine and we found a few areas that had some good samples that we can get terraspec readings off of, and assayed as well. And that's just what's exposed on surface. But one of the better takeaways from that was that we found it was a newly discovered zone because it was on a brand new logging road that was just built within the last year or two. We picked this out of the side of the logging road, not float, like it's an actual outcrop that was exposed by the logging company, and that ran 11.35% copper, 0.17 moly, 1.5 grams gold, and 130 grams silver. And that's not high grading either. That was actual like taking chunks along it. It was at least probably 1.5 meters wide from what we could see exposed, and that was a minimum width. And this was the backside of one of the samples as well. You can see the fairly concentrated moly along fractures as well, cutting through. There's quite a bit of bornite, and there's chalcopyrite in it, and molybdenite. So we were pretty excited about that. It's a brand new exposure, and the high grade zone through drilling we know kind of comes through this area, and now we found it here striking just west of north, so maybe 350 degrees or so, which puts it straight through the main zone up here. So can potentially be confident that it extends at least down to here, and it's been hit and drilling over here as well. So we're getting even more excited now about this.
Absolutely.
This is a fairly similar one, just showing our target untested target anomalies. So this is the main zone here that I've been mainly talking about, and most of the mineralization is concentrated within this small portion of it here. And then this is the southeast extension that I was talking about, that it's mineralized right up to the edge of this, where the historic block model was done. And then there's the northwest extension over here, where some of the historic percussion holes were mineralized out over here as well. And then the broader untested soil anomalies with just shallow percussion holes and no rock sampling. But this summer is going to be out trying to find surface exposures now on the new logging roads network that's been built through this area. So our ongoing work and near-term planned work. So this summer we're going to be starting with project-wide reconnaissance on, as I was saying, on all the newly built logging roads, which is the most cost-effective method of really expanding on this project. And then continue on with compilation, interpretation, and building geological models based on all the historic drill logs of the 18,000 meters of drilling. And I'd like to take hyperspectral readings on core as well to build it into the 3D model, and probably some thin section spectrography to get a better idea of the mineralization and what it's associated with. So 60 plus line kilometers of deep penetrating IP. So I forgot to mention that these black lines are the proposed potential IP, and this is just a rough grid. They'll likely be adjusted, like these northern ones will be shifted to the west a bit more to cover more of this here, because this whole block's been shifted. And then these would be probably extended this way a little more to get a better coverage. But so these are wide and spaced, deep penetrating proposed IP lines to really get build a good 3D image of the subsurface architecture, I guess, of the whole region, or the whole property. And since we have near surface, fairly detailed 3D IP right over the main zone right here, we can use the signal from that and the surrounding area to really hone the target generation across the rest of the project as well. So this is part of the ongoing right now, as I've already done the 3D inversion of the magnetic data, and then we'll compile the rest of the IP in, and then after we've done it, we'll do a 3D inversion of that as well. And right now, just up to 2,000 meters of diamond drillings planned in a few holes within the next year to year and a half. As everyone knows, drilling is expensive, so we want to really get a good understanding of the ground and the system before we just go start plugging random holes in especially in the if we start going to the farther anomalies to the northwest and southwest. The original or the initial drilling will likely be focused on around expanding on the main zone and to depth. And I believe that's the end.
All right, Shannon, do you want to throw up the 3D model just to sort of give as a closing view? We can have a quick look at that. And while you're setting it up there, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about how we were able to acquire the project. When we first became public in April of 2023, we had a couple of projects under our belt. We wanted to expand because we saw that copper was going to be a real strong contender in the market going forward. So we wanted to grab another copper asset, and especially in British Columbia. So we identified this one. It was in a portfolio of an oil and gas company that had used a shell to basically go public. So these were sitting in the closet, more or less. And this project in particular, we liked out of that portfolio, and we reviewed it. So we did basically a purchase deal right off the bat, no option, nothing like that. So we went to the company and said, look, why don't we get 100% or at least a majority? So we did a deal where we own 90% of the project. The oil and gas company, name is Tuck 2 Resources out of Calgary. They own 10%, and they are on the ticket to contribute 10% of all expenses as well on the project, and they're happy to do that. But what it means for us is that we have not only the majority interest, but there's no option payments, there's no royalty on the project, so it's very unencumbered, and we see long legs to this thing. So I think in the long term, it's going to be, I think it'll be quite a deal that has been done in the past for us. So maybe I'll hand it back to you, Shannon. You can kind of explain what we're looking at here.
So this is just the interactive model, basically, of what the figures we had up there. So this is the more modern drilling that was done from 2005 to 2008, and this is the 0.1%. So just showing that that's basically cutoff grade throughout the entire drilling zone. And then to the southeast, I guess. Yeah, south. It becomes wider space drilling, but even up to where the last holes they drilled, it's still all mineralized. And those samples that we found on surface are actually right here. So the original kind of block model was done up to down here, and the high grade core cuts through here. So as I was saying, we have a pretty good feeling that it does extend through here now and cuts down through here and down into these holes. So this is an obvious kind of expansion now, and infill here and to the southeast over here, and up in this direction as well, and to depth, because as you can see, it's all at least the low grade mineralized halo or core, right to the bottoms of all these holes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and so this is that higher magnetic zone I was speaking about earlier, that kind of almost like a cupola that comes up, and so just above here, so here and here, right, where my colleague and I found the quartz magnetite veining throughout here. So that could be a driving factor for this within this magnetic high here that's being surrounded by mineralization. And these are the two of those percussion holes that I was speaking about that have never been followed up, but they're mineralized. This is the 0.1% as a saying, cutoff. So right to the bottoms of these holes. And just like these ones, those type of percussion were drilled over and through here as well. But the modern drilling, they never followed up on this side of it. So it's another fairly significant target for us on this side of this cupola, magnetic cupola that comes up. And I guess the only other thing maybe would be here to show that this magnetic kind of scalloping through this zone as well, above where these other percussion holes up here hit. And then for reference, I'll just quickly put this on, show the there we go. So this is the 150, greater than 150 ppm copper in soils throughout the area, and you can see where just that small, where the main zone mineralized block model was done, and it continues all the way up through here.
Yeah, that's quite impressive when you layer it that way, and you can see how the geochemistry and the magnetics sort of are aligned along that one area, or at least where the low is in the magnetics and the geochemistry.
Yeah,
it points to a great looking target.
I think that's pretty much it for the.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Shannon, for that. And Romeo, if maybe we can just open it up. If there are any questions, Shannon and I would be happy to answer. I think Shannon is still there. He's just the younger self is showing up.
That's temporarily degraded internet looks like, but I think we still got enough to still good.
And I think maybe Storm's messing it up.
That actually sounds about right. That gets me here too. There are some questions in the chat, but I had a couple first, if you don't mind,
Sure.
just to run through based on the presentation. So first one, I'll throw it to you first, Jeff, but Shannon, feel free to answer afterwards as well. I know the historical drilling at Copper Plateau had some really good results. So that's 19.86 meters of 2.02 copper equivalent. I'm curious, when you were looking at and evaluating the project, what aspects of the historical results really excited you to pursue the project? And then kind of as a corollary, how did those elements compare to similar stage copper porphyry projects?
Yeah, well, I think the two together, really, the two questions are two parts, really are the core of it, basically, no pun intended. But the idea was that, when we're looking at some of these numbers, it's like, well, wait a minute, like people are mining over at Teck at Highland Valley, like they're mining 0.23 or 0.25, percent copper and a little bit of moly on it too. So when we saw those numbers, especially with some high grade intersections over quite substantial lengths, we're going, well, there's got to be more here. So what we were impressed with was not only the grades, but also the data that was available, like historic data, recently drilled, 2008, I guess, was the last drilling that was done. So having all of that stuff available, Shannon's back, was quite impressive, and having it in a package enough for us to review it. And then I think what was the difference for us is that we were able to then put this data into that kind of 3D viewer that we saw at the end there that Shannon was showing us. And it kind of really put everything together, and it was like, this is a great story, and it needs to have more told about it and more work done on it. So that, in a long answer to your question, we were quite impressed right from the start because of many things.
And grade is king, and then when you start seeing the length of intervals that you're getting throughout the region, it's pretty impressive. Plus, critical metals as well, strategic metals. It's all copper, moly.
Sure. That makes sense. And Shannon, I actually got one for you. With a target of potentially over 200 million tons, which you indicated in the presentation, I'd love if you could just, for folks in the room and watching on the replay, walk through your confidence on that target size and what indicators kind of support that scale.
I don't know if I should bring up the presentation to show it again, but so I guess we can't technically talk about it, but there's a non-compliant historic block model that was done in 2011, just over the main zone drilling where it didn't include like the outer peripheral drilling, just the core of it, and that was 75 to 110 million tons. I don't think I can say the grade, but mineable grades potentially for BC porphyries.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just over that one small area. So it's kind of arm waving, but with everything kind of being similar looking in target wise for geophysics, geochemistry, even drilling, the percussion holes that were done historically have fairly similar grades, like broad, not even really low grade, just still 0.05 to 500 ppm to 1000 ppm copper, 0.1%. And being on strike from the high grade zone, we're fairly confident that there's more there to be discovered. And I think 200, if 100's at the main zone, I think 200's fairly reasonable to estimate.
No, awesome.
With quotes and forward-looking statements and everything.
Yeah,
There you go.
we got the slides. I will ask, the 2023 reconnaissance sampling revealed some really like crazy high-grade samples from what I saw. There's one with 11.35% copper, 0.17 moly, 1.5 grams per ton gold, 129 grams per ton silver. How representative do you think those surface samples are of potential mineralization at depth?
Like anything else with exploration, it's very difficult to replicate surface sampling in drilling. But that being said, I'm the one who took the sample on surface, and I know I didn't high grade. And looking through the drilling, there are very high grade zones. We haven't fully gone through all the drill logs to try and get mineralogy and see if it's the exact same zone and model it yet. But there are 6% zones, 9% over 4 meters and 2 meters, respectively. And these are at 60 meters depth, 69 meters depth. And also there was a 12, so almost an identical grade. So 12% copper equivalent over 1.5 meters, 1.6 meters. But that was down below at 250 meters depth. So it gives us quite a bit more confidence that that's just not a small little one-off on surface.
Sure.
Historic drilling through the core of it and at depth and along strike seem to be fairly can't say continuous without knowing, but it looks fairly representative of what is potentially been drilled at depth.
Great.
Just never found on surface because of, as I was saying, with the glacial till veneer cover. Yeah, it's
sure. I got one that's kind of either one of you can answer. I particularly want to hear if you guys disagree. But I saw that there were 3 coincident copper moly soil anomalies that remain largely untested. Which of those do you consider the most promising? So, Jeff, I'll go to you first, actually, on this one.
Well, I would say that the one I like the best, and it's because of the length of it, is the one to the north and west. So if you follow up from the main trend of the main zone across that sort of that resistive fault zone, you go across into the more continuous soil geochemistry with a coincident magnetic low in the area. And it's 2.5 kilometers long, 600 meters wide. So that's the one I like the best because it has the potential for hosting a fairly decent size resource of some sort. Maybe Shannon can tell you another one. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree for untapped blue sky potential as well. The size is fairly amazing in my opinion for the strike length and width of it. But I guess ease of discovery, I guess, is probably expanding on the main zone and our targets that are to the southeast and at depth, and on the other side of that mag high cupola I was talking about that hasn't been tested. Those are fairly easy follow-ups as well. So it's a toss-up because we can potentially get fairly significant numbers, which would be good for market and just optics kind of thing. But you also always want to get that new discovery at depth, high-grade intervals or large intervals that have never been tested before. So
yeah, well, we'll take it all. Actually.
Basically, like it's like a brownfields to greenfields type.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Opinion, yeah.
All of them's a decent answer for sure.
Yeah.
I do want to quickly zoom out, Jeff. I know your team has really so much experience across North America, Latin America, Caribbean, Africa. I'm curious if there's any lesson from past exploration that you're applying to Copper Plateau specifically, from you or anyone on the team.
Yeah, maybe I'll start it off first. Is I think probably the first thing that you have to do is, and it's the cheapest exploration, is to make sure that you gather all the historic data that you can. You can imagine that, 18,000 meters of drilling, 7,000 soil samples at Copper Plateau. If you had to go and do that yourself, I mean, that's a big amount of money. So for us, anywhere we go, before you even get on the ground, is you try to gather up as much as you can. And that works well in whether you're in Africa or South America or the Caribbean or wherever. The other thing that we've learned is that you're dealing with a lot of stakeholders, no matter where you are in the world, right? Whether you're in Peru or in Jamaica or in Zimbabwe, you have to go and talk to the local stakeholders, have good communication with them, let them at least try to understand what you're doing there and manage expectations. So that's sort of on the ESG level of things. So that's kind of, where I come from and see that, it's like the first steps of any program. You've got to get that under your belt before you can even go and put a hammer on the ground. So Shannon, maybe you can kind of add to that.
I was actually going to say pretty much the same thing. Community engagement from the start is one of the biggest factors. They're always very appreciative of you coming to them and stepping up and saying we're coming to do this and we'd like to work with you on it and come to an agreement and try and help both ways, like help us at the project, which and helps the community with jobs and resources and things like that as well. And
that makes sense.
That's my biggest thing is that.
That makes sense. I do. I got a couple questions from the audience that I did want to get to.
Okay.
So Wesley asked right at the beginning of the hour, is Copper Plateau the main area of concentration for this year? Is it your top priority?
Maybe I'll answer that. Yeah, we've got, I guess, two projects that we're kind of focusing on, and Copper Plateau is one of them. And the reason why I say that is because it and our centerfire are probably pretty well close to drilling with a small amount of work to be done. So that's our mandate in 2025, is to get some drilling done. And I would say Copper Plateau is probably at the top of the list. We have started our permitting process. That is a little bit of an unknown in BC, but I believe that the mandate with the government is to make that a lot quicker. With the most recent election and a new ministry basically that's focused on mining and exploration. So that, fingers crossed, we'll be able to get into Copper Plateau as sooner than later this year.
Good, appreciate that. Graham asks you to gaze into a crystal ball here, Jeff, and I always hate making people do this, but here we go. Yes, two-part question, both hard to answer. but let's go for it. First is, will copper prices continue to show strength through to the end of the year? And when do juniors start seeing the benefit from that in financings, et cetera?
Ooh, yeah, so those are two great questions, and I wish I could say things with confidence. I can only give you my opinion on the copper, the strength of the copper price, the copper as a commodity, and I think it has some good legs to it, and I think the recent price increase, but then decrease of tariff issues, I think is only temporary. I think we'll see the demand continue increase. I think supply of copper will be a challenge for many reasons, whether it's closing off taps and closing off countries from trading. But it's just how many mines out there are going to be able to produce copper for the amount that we need. So bullish on copper prices, and I think they'll continue to increase over the next, I'd like to say, decade. So keep an eye on that. We'll see how. Let's have an interview in 10 years and see where we are. And then as far as the sort of, maybe you can remind me on the other part.
It's when do juniors start to see the benefit?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, and I think a lot of the majors, a lot of mid-tiers, and even offshore companies are really seeing it's a buyer's market to come in and look at juniors that have decent assets like Copper Plateau. And I think you'll see, some acquisitions or some joint ventures. And I think once that starts rolling, it draws attention to the junior market. And we can look at the deal, that A-Mark did with Freeport. It took a little bit of time, but having that investment from a major company pays dividends all along. Just gets the stock, makes the discovery, gets the stock going. So I think that could be the way things will go, is the attention from third parties into the junior market will stimulate the market, will stimulate the companies having discoveries, and then the stock prices will then go to the moon after that. That's my other prediction.
No, appreciate you indulging a little crystal ball gazing with us here today. So with only 2 minutes left, I do want to throw it to you guys just to wrap up on Copper Plateau, give some final words, and talk about what's going on with Cascade. So Jeff, I'll leave the floor to you to wrap us up here today.
Yeah, I'll start it off, and then I'll let Shannon have a couple of last words. But we're really keen on getting on the ground and doing some more work on Copper Plateau, as Shannon mentioned, the IP, looking at the new open ground that's been created by the logging roads, and eventually getting in there and doing some drilling. But that all takes money. So we do have a private placement that is open, and if anybody's interested in looking at that, please give me a call. And we can make sure that my coordinates are available or on the website. Please go ahead and get in touch. So I'll hand it over to Shannon for his final words.
Sounds ominous.
For this event, yes.
It's pretty much the same words as Jeff. I'm pretty excited to get on the ground and check out all these new exposures on the new logging road system. Just from being there that single day on a new road, we found that high grade zone on surface, which gives us a lot of confidence about extent. So fingers crossed, I guess, and we'll get out and find a few more like it this summer.
Absolutely.
And then get the ball rolling.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, Shannon, thanks so much for the detailed presentation, run through some questions with me today.
Thanks, Romeo.
I think this was great. And folks in the room, thanks for joining us. The replay will be available just a few short hours, so it should end up right in your inbox. But everyone, thank you so much. Have a great end of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.